Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, taxes and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Taige, welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm very much so looking forward to our conversation today, but before diving in, I would love to hear a little bit more about you, your background, and how you got to where you are today.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, Nicole. So my name is Taige. I've been living around the world pretty much my whole life. So I was, born in China, grew up in New York, Canada, California, and so also studied in Europe, worked in Europe. So pretty international. And how I got started with FairyTrail is I was living in San Francisco, and a lot of my friends wanted to travel, but they didn't have anyone to travel with. So at the time, I thought there was a lot of fun activities on Airbnb, TripAdvisor, and Get Your Guide, like kayaking, horseback riding, wine tours. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool just to match people on these adventures, right? So we put all of the tours in our inventory and had people match on it. So that's kind of how the whole thing got started. And now it has evolved. It has evolved into something else, but very excited for where it's going.
One of the biggest challenges, actually, I would probably say the biggest challenge that not only myself, but a lot of other global citizens, digital nomads, remote workers who travel have is finding community. There are, of course, there's dating apps, which is different. But now what I do like is that they have like a BFF version of a lot of these as well. But I really like what you have designed because it's a lot more focused on the connection side and, of course, less on the dating side of things, or it's more of a equal distribution. But that has been the biggest struggle for me. And it sounds like you likely have experienced that as well. Is that something that you experienced? And is that where the idea for FairyTrail really came about from?
Yeah, so in terms of the dating aspect, definitely, I think a lot of us aren't very satisfied with dating apps and think they could be better. So one thing I was trying to do was to build an alternative to dating apps, which is just this whole idea that there's so many fun adventures out there. Let's just go on these fun adventures and kind of get to know each other, have fun, and like make it more organic, right? So that's kind of one of the core use cases of FairyTrail. It's really to help people like find someone for a really supportive and healthy relationship.
Yeah, and I love that you encompass relationships. It's very broad. It's not just one spectrum of, I think, what we think about relationships when we are talking about the apps. Let's talk about you and your entrepreneurial journey. Now, where did that start? Is FairyTrail the first endeavor that you have had in the entrepreneurial space, or what has that looked like for you? Because a lot of the listeners are entrepreneurs or building something for themselves, but there are so many different ways that you can create wealth and create an amazing living for yourself as an entrepreneur.
That's a great question. So actually, I'm just thinking about one of the first real entrepreneurial endeavors. And it would probably be, so I was going to school in Palo Alto. I was going to high school there, and it was a predominantly white school. And I was like, bubble tea is really cool. How come they're not selling it here at school? So I started making bubble tea and selling it in my high school. And it was just the worst sell because none of them had tried bubble tea before. So it was like, no one knew it was good. They were like, what is this? And it was just so hard to do. Like, I think just I was like, this is so cool. Come on, it's really, and everyone's like, what is this? So it took a while for it to kind of, but now like bubble tea is everywhere. But I remember when I was going to high school, I was trying to like push this new product into a market that didn't really that never encountered it before. So that was probably one of my first endeavors.
That's so funny. I love that. And I love that you started so early in high school, where it sounds like you've always really had this thirst for entrepreneurship, which is great that now that can be merged with working remotely and traveling, which we'll definitely dive into. What did the formation of creating an app, and actually maybe even before that, the idea of creating an app, not a website, not, something else. It's specifically an app. And then, I mean, the software and tech space, especially in the US and San Francisco, it's wild. So I'm curious what this whole journey has looked like for you and some of the challenges that you faced along the way.
Yeah. So my job is in product management. So in my day-to-day work, I work on apps. So I worked on a ride-sharing app. I worked on a home cleaning app, a grocery delivery app. So I'm very familiar with app design and engineering. And so I'm very fortunate in that I got to make a lot of mistakes and learn a lot in terms of my day job. So then I can apply a lot of that learning to my side projects. And I'm technical, so I built a few apps myself just on the weekends, and FairyTrail was one of them. And that's how it got started, because it's a huge risk to just quit your job and do your own business. So I like to de-risk by working on side projects. And if these side projects take off, then it's less of a risk for me to do it full time when the time comes.
That's so cool. I love that. I love that you took a passion of yours and made it a side hustle and then seeing what the potential for that could be. Now, how did you get started with the app? Do you have investors? Did you have funding? Like, what did that look like? Or it was just simply a side project and you grew it on your own with a small team? What is that journey from the very beginning of its creation to where it is now today with so many users across the globe? What does that look like in detail?
Yeah, great question. So we started off actually leveraging a lot of my experience building apps before. And so before Fairy Trail, I built a map app where you can like plot your favorite locations. That was really cool, just because I love maps and like curation. I built let's see, what was that one? It was a social to do app. There was like a little avatar you had, and then every time you did something, your avatar would get like, it's kind of like a digital pet that you would like feed by doing your to-dos. So that was kind of cool. And then the third one was it was like a journaling app, which also was really meaningful. And then this one is pretty much just like all of the previous experiences I had built on top of this one, right? So everything I learned from previous app development made developing this app much easier. And for this one, I didn't code it myself. The most of the engineering was done by contractors, which is a lot better when you have a full-time job, because it's a huge effort to code an app. And then you have design and QA. So there's just so much to do. And sometimes, yeah, so it's a lot. And actually, I was doing all of it by myself. So it was pretty tricky. But over time, some of my friends decided to help out of interest. And so, yeah, I did get some support along the way. And now that I've kind of jumped into a full time, it's definitely a lot more serious. I do have more of a team now, whereas before, no one really, I feel like people don't want to take a huge risk, just like I didn't want to take a huge risk and quit my job to work on it. I think it's the same with other people. People don't want to take a huge risk. And so the more you can prove out there's substance behind it, the more people will join.
Interesting. Really interesting to hear No, I don't think we've had any guests on the show who are specific to creating a software app for digital nomads. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective and your journey behind it. So, what has the journey looked like to grow the community of FairyTrail? I mean, you have so many users across the globe, you have a great website, Facebook page. So, what has that looked like in order to get people on the platform? Because you can have a really great app, but if there's nobody on it, then there's no point of having the really great app.
Yeah, exactly. We have a pretty good app, and we want to do more on the marketing side. We do have people that love the app. I mean, I get emails every week from people saying how much they love the app or hate the app because of some bug. But even if they say they hate the app because of some bug, it's usually a positive signal in that like they care enough to write the email. So it's good in that respect as well. I think in terms of what we could do much better is definitely the marketing piece. Even though we have about 50,000 users right now, we can, with the right marketing, I think we can have upwards of millions of users. Like there's millions of digital nomads in the US alone. And so we definitely can have millions of users. So we're actually really looking forward to kind of growing at this point.
Are you interested in becoming a global citizen and living a lifestyle by design in a country that aligns with you? If this is a lifestyle that you're seeking to create, we can help. Whether it be multiple residencies, citizenships, bank accounts, trust or company formations, we operate in 30 plus of the most tax-friendly jurisdictions around the globe to get you structured properly. Head to the link in the show notes to learn more and to get your global citizen journey underway today.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, really, the sky is the limit because so many people from so many different age demographics want to be either fully or partly nomadic. So I think your target market is probably about half the world at this point, which is awesome. There's just so much potential to grow. So working remote is very important to you. And of course, this is an app that's built around digital nomads and a travel lifestyle. So, what does it look like in terms of you running the business, you having your team, working remote, working in office? How did that start out? And then how does that look now?
Yeah, so it started initially, we weren't remote, we were all in SF. But now, we're pretty much all remote. And the cadence is every quarter we would meet and like have an offsite, which kind of is really good for community and team building. Also for some more like spontaneous ideation and just like that spark. And outside of that, we pretty much just work remotely. We tend to be on the US European time zones, just because it would be a little bit crazy to also have Asia, but we also do sometimes have folks traveling in like Australia and in Taiwan, and so we do make it work pretty much across the globe at this point.
That's awesome. I definitely am a big advocate of remote work, working from anywhere. And I find, I'm curious actually if you find this as well, there's so much more productivity when you can do it on your time and you know how much time something will take you. So you don't have to allot an 8 hour day and then only work for 3 of those hours.
Yeah, so I think for us, the biggest things are one, just the talent, right? Like you can't expect to have the best talent all in one place, right? And so it's been really awesome for us to just like be able to work with awesome people all around the world. The second thing is this, it's like this perk, right? You get this perk of having freedom and flexibility in your workplace, and it's just a really nice perk that I think so many people appreciate. Yeah, and we try to get as much overlap as possible just for that team spirit.
Yeah, I love that. What are, I'm curious, one or two of the biggest challenges that you have faced in this journey, whether it be the entrepreneurship side of things, building the app, the team aspect, traveling, and whether that's been a hindrance. What are a few of the biggest challenges that you have faced?
Yeah, there's so many. I would say engineering is definitely one of the challenges. Just having enough time to build, and also the team, because I'm not coding this app myself. I would need to find people who can execute, and sometimes it's very complicated. And I remember we hired one developer who worked for a month, and it just didn't, what he wrote just didn't really work. And then we had to spend another month to kind of like undo all of the code changes. So one is the technical aspect. It's hard to build a high quality app. And now that we have pretty much the stability of the app under control, we're getting a lot of positive feedback now. The next big piece for us is marketing. And so that's kind of the next big challenge.
Awesome. Well, this has been really interesting. I want to throw it back to you and ask you if there is anything that we haven't touched on so far in this interview that is important to note, or that you would want listeners to know, to be aware of, to food for thought, something that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah, I think what I've seen in a lot of successful companies is just this grit and perseverance that gets companies into a very successful place, right? And sometimes I'm talking to angel investors, and like the advice they give me really is like, hey, what they've seen isn't so much like this guy's super smart or whatever. It's really the startups that make it persevere, and they work through the hardships. So I think that's something that a lot of awesome people have told me, and I've seen myself. So I would love to just like kind of pass that on and share that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. And I think as entrepreneurs, it can be really easy to see other people, like even, for somebody to see you and what you're doing on the outside. And like, he's doing such a fantastic job with his business and the app. And like, I just can't do that, but it really comes down to, are you willing to put in the work for years to come, not just weeks or months or even 1 or 2 years, like years to come. So for me, anytime I start a new business or a new endeavor, I'm thinking minimum 5 years. It's like, okay, is this going to be something that can grow and evolve in 5 years' time? And I have to have, 3, 4, 5 years of putting effort into it before I expect to see a huge return. And I think a lot of people don't have that mindset because instant gratification is such a big thing. We see it all over social media, and we live in such a comparison culture. But really, you just have to put your head down and do the work sometimes. And it doesn't even have to always be hard work. You just have to be consistent, show up, and do the work.
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen so many success stories just because the founders or the content creator was consistent. So yeah, those are really inspiring, especially for like entrepreneurs where sometimes you're not sure if it's going to pay off.
Exactly. And I believe anything can be successful and anything can pay off, but it's the consistency piece behind it and being a smart, savvy business person. So where can people find the app? And then we also have a very special discount membership. So please share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so people can find the app on the App Store or Play Store if you Google FairyTrail, or you can come to the website. It's fairytrail.app, and then from the website you can find the app. And then for the listeners, I'm happy to give a lifetime free membership to FairyTrail, and FairyTrail can be used by solo travelers, by couples and families who want to connect with like-minded people. So people that also love adventure and love to travel.
I love that. Such an amazing deal. So head to the show notes. It is linked there where you can sign up for the app if you don't already have an account. Take advantage of this deal. Taige, thank you so much for being on the show. You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast.
If anything from this episode resonated with you, I would appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag me. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this global citizen journey, and I'll see you in the next episode.